So, hello everyone. The title of our research paper is Attribution and Reciprocity in an Experimental Labor Market, which is written by Gary Charnes in University of California. And you can find this article in Journal of Labor Economics. And we are a group of Jiang and Jihan Song. And let's get started. So before we talk about our research paper, let's first get into the gift exchange game. I think most of you are already familiar with this topic since we covered in class. In gift exchange game, we are able to anticipate how worker will behave when certain wage is offered by an employer. So I think most of you have experience working on part-time jobs to earn money, and to share my personal experience, I also worked as a teaching assistant in English Academy during summer vacation with high salary. And as I get high salary, I try to work more harder and try to be more responsible. And similar things happen in this picture. At this picture, when the employer decides to offer high salary, the employer would get 3 when the low effort is chosen, or get 2 when worker tries to reciprocate high salary with high effort. So as a result, we are able to know that when higher wage is offered by employers, workers also respond with higher effort. Gary Charnes, who is the author of our article, also knows that higher wages lead to more costly effort provision. However, he wasn't clear whether this behavior reflects reciprocity or other forms of social preferences. So, the main question of our article was, what drives workers' costly effort provision? So, this behavior could be determined by either distributive preference or reciprocal preference, or any other types of social preference. We will be able to know the answer by looking at the experiment. Now let's get into our experiment. So, experiment. How was the experiment conducted? So 122 students were involved in this experiment, and they were divided into half, and they got a row of employers and employees. So 61 people were employers and 61 people were employees. And then they were divided into smaller groups of 10 employers and 10 employees in an experiment with 10 periods. And you have to keep in mind that these groups were paired anonymously, and employers and employees were matched only once, so no reputation formation was concerned. Okay, so once they were separated into smaller groups, they had time to introduce themselves. After short introductions, employers were moved into another room, and employees received a wage, and this wage was decided by either an employer or an exogenous factor. An exogenous factor here means that randomly draw from a bingo cage or from the third party, which is the assignment made by the experimenter. And employees could not reject the given wages. So the amount of wages given to employees were up to 20 to 120, and after employees received their wage, they were informed to write down the effort choice between 0.1 to 1 on a recording paper, and after filling in this recording paper, it was delivered to employers so they could observe effort choices made by each employees. And as you can see, this experiment was sequential because these sections were made in orders. So employers first decided wages, and after wage was decided, employees choose their effort, and employer just simply observe choice made by employees. And to talk about things that players know when they make decisions were attribution treatment and monetary payoff function for employer and employee. And here E stands for effort, W stands for wages, and CE is for cost of effort. Since the experiment was sequential, the game was solved by backward induction, and as a result, we're able to know that return to the employer is much greater than the cost to the worker by using these functions. And according to the standard economic model, players only care about their own money maximization. Therefore, employees would choose minimum effort and employers would assign minimum wage. But in this experiment, we may expect some deviations from own money maximization since employees might choose higher effort to increase efficiency, which is the total payoff of the group. So the wage effort relation can be represented by a linear function which is written as E equals to the alpha plus beta times W, where alpha measures the average amount by which effort differs from the minimum at the lowest wage, and beta represents the reciprocal altruism, which basically is the desire to reward or punish others depending on their behavior, like if they're being fair or unfair. That's why we can expect higher beta in employer case than in exogenous case. And this is pretty much it for our experimental design. And my partner Zhang will continue the result part.
Now we will get to the result of this experiment. The first thing we can notice is a positive relationship between effort and wage. Only 21% of the employees act in accordance with the predictions for pure money maximization by always selecting the minimum effort. The remaining 79% consider the employer's welfare too, and therefore chose higher effort with higher wage, even if it lowers their own payoff. This result shows that most people are willing to contribute a portion of the monetary payoff in order to increase the payoff of others, even if these others have done nothing on their behalf, like with exogenous factors. Or we can say that employees tend to have preferences for efficiency in this experiment. This table shows the average effort by wage range and by treatment. The last column is the result we get by combining the two exogenous treatment, the random and the third party. When the wages is between 20 and 39, the average effort is much lower in the employer case, only 0.10 compared to 0.16 in the combined exogenous case. From the wage range 2039 to 6079, the average effort increases by 0.31 in the employer case and just by 0.21 in the exogenous case. So the effort is more volatile in employer case. At high wages, behavior is identical across treatments, even though positive reciprocity would predict a large gap. Overall, when the wages are low, employees are less likely to provide costly effort in employer treatment. And when wages are high, there's little difference across treatments. Therefore, we can see a substantial effect from reciprocity, and the positive effect is not as clear as the negative effect. Another way to analyze the result is by looking at the wage effort function. E0 equals alpha plus beta times W0, where E0 equals effort minus 0.1 and W0 equals wage minus 20. Alpha measures the average amount by which effort differs from the minimum at the lowest wage, and the value of alpha is significantly negative in all cases, but is more so with employer case. The slope beta here represents the reciprocal altruism and is 36% higher in the employer treatment than in the exogenous treatment. There is a significant difference across treatments, which suggests negative reciprocity when low wages are assigned by employers. We can say that an employer who intentionally chooses a low wage can be perceived to have misbehaved in a social sense. Therefore, employees would tend to choose low effort to punish them when employers act unfairly. When the wages are assigned by an exogenous factor, there's no such effect from reciprocal altruism. To have a more detailed analysis, we can segment wages into three categories: inferior to 30, between 30 and 79, and superior to 79. When the wages are smaller than 30, employees provide costly effort 23% of the time in the pool, random, and third-party treatment. Here, pure efficiency motivation can dominate both on money maximization and any type of inequality aversion. However, efficiency concerns are overwhelmed when negative reciprocity is added to the mix. In the employer case, the employee will inevitably receive less than the employer, so the employee never chooses costly effort. When the wages are between 30 and 79, the employee's effort choice will determine whether he or the employer receives the larger monetary payoff. Here we can ask if the efficiency motive is strong enough to cause an employee to choose a higher effort and therefore receive a lower monetary payoff, and whether this varies across the source of the wage. It turns out that this occurs only about 16% of the time, regardless of the treatment, so there is no substantial difference across treatments when the wages are non-minimum, or we can say reasonable. When the wages are above 79, the employee always receives higher monetary payoff than employers. When the efficiency effect diminishes substantially at high wages, and there is almost no difference across treatments. However, there are relatively few observations in this wage range, so the result may not be significant. In conclusion, to answer the question of the article, this experiment has pointed out the factors affecting costly effort provision: distributive concerns, causal attribution, and reciprocity. Distributive concerns have the larger role here. People have preferences for increasing a combination of the total payoff of the group, efficiency, and the minimum payoff of any player, and these preferences can induce personal financial sacrifice. But the influence of causal attribution is also well supported by the result. A worker who believes that a high wage is voluntary or a low wage is involuntary is more likely to choose a higher effort level. Finally, effort is more sensitive to the wage in the employer treatment, but only at low and moderate wages. It reflects the importance of negative reciprocity, and the positive effect is not very significant in this experiment. And that was the end of our presentation. I hope that you can now understand why you work harder with higher wages. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.